Cassandra is sexually attracted to inanimate objects, and that's like a whole thing. Hello, good morning. I hope you are all doing well. I'm here to talk about all the books that I read and did not finish in January of 2026. We're just going to dive right into it. The first book that I finished was The Hounding. I listened to this as an audiobook while I completed a little book nook that I got for Christmas for my husband, which made a really enjoyable reading experience, honestly. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, and the thing with this book is that it was compared to The Virgin Suicides, which I've also recently read. So it's that vibe and that book is very fresh in my mind. And I thought that this was everything that The Virgin Suicides wanted to be, but just wasn't. They had very similar plot lines, but I really think that in The Hounding, the way that the girls were talked about was just done in a much better way. I really liked the kind of the fear that the people around these girls had, and I just thought it was really intriguing. It was very short, so it wasn't, the most groundbreaking thing I've ever read, but I did really like it. The second book I finished this year was Ring Shout, which I have an entire video about. So I'm not going to go on too long about it, but I really hated this book for a lot of different reasons. I didn't like the writing style. I didn't like what Clark did with the plot very much, and it was just a really disappointing and frustrating read for me. I should have DNF'd it. The next book I finished was Jane and Dan at the End of the World. I also listened to this as an audiobook, and it was a wonderful little audiobook. I feel like every once in a while I need to read just like a little popcorn book. Everyone talks about like a popcorn thriller or popcorn mystery, but just a popcorn fiction. This is definitely what that was. The plot is that Jane and Dan, they are at a anniversary dinner for their marriage, and Jane is contemplating getting a divorce. And throughout this night, she kind of rediscovers her love for Dan, and it's a very wild ride with an eco-terrorist aspect and a kind of meta story within a story aspect as well that I just thought was really fun. It wasn't the best thing I've ever read, but it was just a really fun book. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars because it was exactly what I wanted it to be, and it did it perfectly. The next book I finished was Moon of the Crusted Snow. I thought it was very fitting to read this at the very beginning of January, even though I live in a place where it does not snow often. I liked the idea of the story, but I just think that it kind of fell flat for me in a lot of different ways. I feel like the villains that the book introduced, like, so quickly turned into kind of like a cartoonish villain. And I understand the ideas and themes that were explored, and I think the writing itself was okay. It just wasn't great. So I gave this a 2.5 out of 5 stars. There were there were chapters that I did enjoy. And like I said, I really enjoyed the plot, and I thought some of the characters were pretty decent, but it just didn't really do it for me. The next book I finished was Martyr. This has been on my TBR for a good amount of time, and I'm really happy I finally got around to reading it. I really liked it. It was very different than what I expected, but I really loved the writing. I loved how the story was told, and I loved the kind of like how all these different characters came together in the end, and how our main character, Cyrus, how he was able to kind of find peace in his life. I thought it was really heartwarming and really well written. I was finding excuses to listen to this audiobook. I enjoyed it so much. I give it a 4 out of 5 stars. Okay, next I read Strange Pictures, and I thought it was fine. I thought Strange Pictures was fine. It was very hand-holding, and I think that's my biggest gripe with the book, is that by the time I was kind of developing my own guesses as to the deeper meanings of these pictures, the characters were already telling me. And they were like, well, maybe it's this, but then it's like, but it wasn't maybe that. Like that's what it was, you know? So I think that was my biggest issue with the book. And I also thought that like some of the conclusions they were drawing was a bit of a stretch. I thought the way that the different like sets of pictures connected was a little it just wasn't as good as I kind of maybe built it up to be, but I had heard really good things and just didn't really enjoy it. 2.5 out of 5. Okay, the next book I read was The Exorcist. This has been on my TBR for a while, but buying the book really pushed me to actually read it. And I enjoyed the first 2/3 of the book, but the third part really let me down. I can't really tell you what really happened in the third book the third part because it just happened so fast. I was on a hike while I was listening to the audiobook when it finished, and I stopped dead in my tracks and was like, wait, the book's over? I thought I had accidentally skipped ahead a whole bunch, or I don't even know what I thought happened, but I was like blown away that I had hit the end of the book because it just felt like it ended so fast and didn't match the pace of the rest of the book, because so much of the book is this slow build up into this possession. And I just didn't love how it ended. I also think that it is not the most terrifying novel ever written. I know that it's kind of touted as the scariest horror book ever, and I don't think it was scary. I think it was disturbing in a lot of ways because this like demonic possession is in this little girl's body. Like she's what, 12, barely 12 or maybe 13, but she's young. And so that was more disturbing for me, just like the visual of this like small child and like the things she was doing, which like if you've seen the movie or read the book, you know what I'm talking about. I thought that was more disturbing than the actual context itself. But yeah, overall it was just kind of a disappointing read for me. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. Pretty meh, pretty middle of the road. Okay, the next book I read was The Night Always Comes. This is by a Portland author, and you can tell immediately. I do live in the Portland area, and I've lived here for a couple months now, so I recognized a lot of the landmarks that were in this book, and it got to the point where I was like, who is this for? Like, why are you talking about the St. John's Bridge? Because anyone who is not familiar with Portland would not know what the St. John's Bridge is. So there's like things like that, or even something as simple as our main character, Lynette, she calls a cab at one point, and instead of just saying that she calls a cab, she says that she calls a radio cab, which is like the main cab brand here in Portland. So it's just like little things like that where I got to the point where I was like, okay, we get it. You're from Portland. Otherwise, I liked how the story was told. I liked how with each person that Lynette visits, we learn more about her and about her struggles and about her kind of mentality. And I really liked how it ended too. I thought it ended on a really good note. I really liked it. Real quick, the plot, because I doubt a lot of people have heard of this book. I certainly had not. It is about a girl, Lynette. She's in her 20s and she is struggling financially and has a not great relationship with her mother. Her brother is severely disabled, and it's about her just kind of working to get enough money to buy the house that they live in, and it takes place over 1 or 2 nights of her trying to get all this money. And I really liked it. I just thought it got a little over the top with all the Portland references. I gave this a 3.5 out of 5. Okay, the next book I read, I'm actually so excited to talk about because, first of all, the cover is stunning. It's so cool. It's like, oh my gosh, I just realized the significance of the pearls. Wow. So I finished this book and then immediately went out and bought it. I loved it so much. The writing for me was very similar to the writing of Pure Color, which I know a lot of people really love. I hated it. My issue with Pure Color is that the writing was like this very like abstract and over the top flowery language, but there wasn't a plot to support that language. I felt like the language was the point, not the plot. Where this, I feel like the language very much adds to the plot. So this also takes place in 24 hours, and it is told from the point of view of a housewife and how she just goes about her day. And you get a lot of like her internal thoughts and feelings and dialogue and how she feels she interacts in the world. A lot of her issues and like inner turmoil is about how she doesn't feel like she's being like a correct person. It was just very interesting. The use of bold and italics and parentheses and list I thought was just really, really intriguing and really added to, again, the plot and who she was as a person. I really loved it and I highly recommend it. It's only 140 pages. I blew through it so quick. Absolutely loved it. And again, what a stunning cover. What a stunning cover. Loved it. First 5-star of the new year. Okay, next up, I read Small Game, and I thought this one was fine. I thought it was fine. It is about people who are on a survival reality show, and I really liked the kind of side that we saw where our main character is basically explaining all the fake things they do and how she's thinking about how they might edit what she's saying and what she's doing to be misconstrued. I just thought that the ending kind of happened really fast and it didn't feel, not that it wasn't earned, but it also didn't quite feel earned. And I don't know. There's also what I felt to be an unnecessary romance. You'll see this book tagged with like LGBT, and I don't know. I thought it was kind of thrown in there for whatever, and it wasn't my favorite way to see a lesbian relationship. Yeah, it just wasn't my favorite. It was fine. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. Don't really have a lot more to say about it. Okay, second to last book that I finished in January was Sister Wife. This is a memoir from Christine Brown, who is one of the wives of Cody Brown from the show Sister Wives. When I found out that this existed, I wanted to read it so fast. I grew up watching the Sister Wives with my mom, and I love Christine. She's my favorite of the wives. Christine and Janelle, those are my girls. I was so excited to read this, especially knowing that Christine was the first wife to have left Cody Brown, and I thought it was a really good memoir. Her voice shows through really well in the writing, and like if you watch the show, you know what I'm saying. And at times it just felt like a podcast that I was listening to, just like an interview about her and her life. I really liked how the book was broken up. It goes into a lot of like her background and like her childhood growing up in the church and like her convictions towards the church, and then her as a wife, and then her as like just herself. And I thought it was really good. I really liked it. Very authentic. It was really interesting to hear kind of her thoughts on some things that I had seen on TV. 2 things though, because I have not kept up with the Brown family at all. I was so confused at who Leon was, and then it clicked. And then really upset to hear about Garrison too. I was again on a hike when I heard that, and I was like, oh my gosh, like that's awful. But I really liked it. I thought she did a really good job, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. Okay, the last book that I read in January of 2026 was The Tyranny of Flies. I have not heard a lot of English speaking people talk about this book. It is very popular in the Spanish speaking community. It is a satire on Cuba and Cuban dictatorship, and I really liked it. I thought it was so interesting and bizarre in all the best ways. So it follows this family, and there's 3 kids, Cassandra, Caleb, and Kalia. Cassandra is sexually attracted to inanimate objects, and that's like a whole thing. That's a whole thing. Caleb is like a grim reaper for animals, except they come to him to die. He doesn't like go to them. So that's another very big point in the book. And then Kalia, they're all kind of scared of because she's 3 and she does not speak, but she draws. And she draws these like incredibly detailed portraits of animals. And she is displaying similar characteristics that their aunt did before their aunt did something kind of crazy. So they kind of tiptoe around Kalia. She's like super smart. She thinks they're all very stupid and dumb and below her. The mom is like kind of neurotic and very checked out. She's a therapist, so she has therapy sessions with her children. And she is just like kind of oblivious to the downside, like the downfalls of her husband. And her husband is this dictator's right-hand man. He is so interesting. He has a stutter, and it's very interesting to see his character arc and how that changes. I also think it's really funny that they refer to this dictator as either Pop Pop Mustache or Mr. Mustache, I think. It was so fun. It was a fun book. The satire was just in your face, which if you don't like that, probably won't like this. It was really morbid and just bizarre. It was just really bizarre, but I really liked it. I thought the writing was really good. I thought the story was just like fun. It did kind of drag in some spots, I think, and there were some things that were a little unnecessary, but overall, I did really enjoy it. I gave this a 4.5 out of 5 stars. So overall, January has been a pretty decent reading year. I've had a lot of books that I felt were really good and really intriguing, and I'm excited to continue and hopefully have a bit of a better reading year than I did last year. Last year, I just felt that most of the books I read were just fine. They weren't anything that I was going to remember forever, and there were very few books that I read that I was just they absolutely stuck with me and continue to stick with me. However, there is one book that I DNF'd this January, and that is The Terror by Dan Simmons. I was recommended this by a coworker, and I know that it was pretty popular, I think last year, especially because of the Netflix special that came out, but it was just too dang slow for me. I felt like I was slogging through it, and I didn't love how the story was structured and how it kept jumping around from different time periods and with different people. It made it just very confusing for me to kind of keep up. I don't love when books jump around like that because I get kind of in the zone for this one person, this one character, this one setting, and then it changes. Especially in a book like this, because it wasn't very static going back and forth. It was like kind of jumping all around. So didn't love that. And again, it was really slow and really long, and I just felt like we weren't building to anything. I didn't feel connected to any of the characters or any of the people who had died at the point that I stopped. I stopped reading at 17%, which was 4.5 hours of my life. I listened to the audiobook and it wasn't for me. At a certain point, I didn't even know what was really going on, and I didn't care to know what was going on. I didn't feel like I was missing something and that I wanted to go back and re-listen. So that's the one book that I DNF'd in January. For February, have already completed a couple books. I'm in the middle of a couple more, and I've already DNF'd 2 for February, but you will have to wait till March to hear my thoughts and opinions on all of that. So that was my January reading wrap up. I hope your January started just as good as mine did. I hope I've already found a 5-star read, and I hope that you are able to meet some of your goals already. My bingo card is already filling out quite quickly. I've decided that for all of my books published in different years that I'm going to keep track of each book from that year that I've read and then kind of choose my favorites for the bingo card. I don't think that I'm going to have an issue filling it out. And I do have a couple books planned for a fantasy and a sci-fi, which I'm very excited to tell you about. One of those for sure. One of my friends from school wrote it, and I'm just very excited to read it. I'm very excited for them. I know that they've been working on it for years, and they're getting a lot of really good feedback. So I'm excited to read it and share it. But yes, I think that's all I have for today. A bit of a shorter video, very quick reading wrap up. Like I said, I hope that your reading is going well. I hope that you have found a 5-star read, and I hope that your February is even better. Okay, that's all I got. Peace and love. Bye.